Kellan, it's been like 22-ish hours since the Cardinals' Josh Sweat news broke. So
yeah, baby.
What has been your experience with the reaction? Because I'll tell you mine in just a second.
Tepid, surprisingly sort of tepid. And look, is Josh Sweat a four-time All-Pro edge rusher? Is he Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett? No. But as we're going to get into and talk about right now, this sends a message for what the Cardinals are going to try and do this year, and it's a very exciting message. Luke, I'm excited about it. You're excited about it.
I felt like I was in a bubble when I walked out of here yesterday, and I was talking to like people that I know that are huge Cardinals fans, and they like didn't even realize what had happened. It's like, okay, like you just said, they didn't just add Aaron Donald in his prime. They didn't add like whoever you want to say they didn't add Myles Garrett. Okay, they didn't add like some amazing edge rusher either. But they added a really good edge rusher in Josh Sweat. They didn't add a Hall of Famer, but they added a really good player. And more than what they added, like people keep coming back at me with the, well, he had 8 sacks last year. The two reactions I get, Kellan. I mean, there's some people that are excited, but the people that aren't are either they don't ever spend any money, which they did yesterday, or they spent too much money on a guy with 8 sacks. So I'm not saying that they just won the Super Bowl yesterday. They didn't. But they went out and spent money on the top player at the position they need. You could argue the top player in free agency this year. You really could across all the positions. And more than anything, it signifies that they realize how important this season is and that the stakes are raised and that they're acknowledging that they have to make the playoffs, that all the stuff that we've been saying of like, this probably is it for Kyler. If he doesn't make the playoffs, you have to take a long, hard look at that, like a real long, hard look, not just to like, we're sick of him as fans, but like the team will actually take a long, hard look at it if they don't make the playoffs. That's why you go out and spend all your money on the top edge rusher in free agency. I was stunned how like, it's not the whole fan base, but like part of it was just like, eh.
Yeah, you got to sort of understand, and I'm not trying to like explain this to people, but again, like we're surprised by the lack of enthusiasm about this, so we're going to try our best to show ours and explain ours. I think something to understand is this is not really about Josh Sweat, honestly. It's not. It could have been a guard that they signed, like the best guard on the market, one of the top free agents that was a guard, and we would have been psyched about it. Like Will Fry's got like $80 million from the Vikings.
Yeah.
Or whatever, like that type of move.
By the way, the Vikings fans on social media are acting like they just won the Super Bowl because of that move, which is fine. Be irrational about it. Like, let's get crazy.
It's very funny that Sam Darnold like leaves Minnesota and they immediately start protecting the quarterback, and then he moves to Seattle where they have done nothing to address trying to protect the quarterback. Few reasons to get pumped about this. Number one, do you remember 2 years ago when national media people were like, the Cardinals are tanking, right? Because they looked up that roster in the preseason and they're like, this is an intentional tank, right? Like they're purposely not adding to their roster just to be bad.
Yes.
That's how bad their roster was.
It was when they let Colt McCoy go, everybody was like, okay, they're trying to lose.
Yeah, and how little they were trying to improve their roster. Last year, we saw little bits of incremental improvement. We saw, like, Justin Jones, Ball Nichols didn't play. We saw Mac Wilson, Byron Murphy. Like, okay, we're bringing in names, but no one that is like a not household name. But we were looking at like free agency rankings when those guys got signed. We were like talking about guys in the 70s and the 50s. Like it was no one that was a top 25 free agent, let alone a top 5 free agent, which Josh Sweat undoubtedly was in this class. And what I'm excited about as well is for the first round pick this year, number 16, it was imperative for the Cardinals to go edge. Mm-hmm. At least 2 days ago, it was like, you have to go edge. You have to go edge. I was mentioning it on yesterday's show, and I'm going to take it back a little bit. I'm not necessarily sure you need to draft an edge guy now, even the first 2 or 3 rounds, because think about it. Josh Sweat's going to be out there a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Zaven Collins is going to be out there a whole lot. Barron Browning had a sneaky good year. We're going to talk about it with Tyler Drake at 11 o'clock. Like Barron had a lot of pressures last year, earned the raise that he got. And then, of course, B.J. Ojulari, like what is that going to entail exactly? What kind of player is he going to be? But those are 4 guys that are going to need to be on the field a decent amount.
Yeah.
You have Darius Robinson as well. So with that pick, I don't think you necessarily need to look at edge. And now you look across the roster, it's like, okay, using the number 16 pick on a guard isn't necessarily sexy. But if Booker from Alabama is still there.
Now you're starting to sound like Wolf. That's who he's wanted for a month.
It's who we should want, honestly, because it's the one clear definitive need left on the roster. Do they need to add another wideout? I think so. Do they need to add more defensive linemen? Yes, I think so. But there's only one clear definitive need on the team now. It's a guard, and you're afforded the luxury now of taking that guy at 16. And guess what? If he's not there at 16, you can trade down 10 spots and grab a defensive lineman to go alongside. We assume LJ Collier is going to be back. We haven't gotten the news yet that he's resigning, but we're kind of expecting him to be back to go alongside Darius Robinson, Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols. Like, now you have that premium talent alongside Robinson around the same range he was picked in that guy. We're going to talk about linebacker in a bit with the guy that they picked up and Kaiser White potentially being out. I love the idea of like looking at Jihad Campbell out of Alabama, and that's something where it's not a luxury per se, but you wouldn't look at inside linebacker as one of the biggest needs on the team, even if Kaiser left. But now you can maybe spend a mid-first round pick on a linebacker, which is not something a lot of teams do unless that guy's really freaking good. And everything they say about this kid is great. So it just opens up your possibilities now. And even if you believe it's an overpay, fine. But the way that they just addressed by far their biggest need on the team opens up so many other roster possibilities for them.
That's it. I mean, it's so much better than it's been the last couple of years. And it already was. But we were talking about this yesterday before the move happened. You still needed some player. You needed to go out and get somebody that could tie it all together. And I'm not sure you could necessarily do that with a rookie and feel all that confident that it was going to click in year one. Josh Sweat's going to step in here and he's going to click in year one. Now, again, does that mean 15 sacks? No, probably not. But your defense just got better yesterday, like significantly better. And, to your point, you went out and you got one of the biggest name players in free agency this year. Like Wolf always described it like this, and he did it in real time, so I'll give him credit. 2 years ago when they were making those moves where people were like, okay, they're tanking, he was like, look, you're rebuilding. You're tearing this down and starting over with a new culture. You're just bringing in pros. And then last year he's like, okay, now they're bringing in starters. There is a difference between what they did in year one with Monty and what they did in year two. And he's right. And you saw the win total go up, and you saw them play better football. There's a gray area between the Cardinals in 2022 when they won 4 games and were like melting down off the field and winning the Super Bowl. There's a huge gray area. It's called the entire NFL. So the progress that they're making, I'm not just going to pretend they're not making. But once they get to 8 wins, if they don't go out and actually make significant moves, you run the risk of being stuck at 8 wins. That was a significant move yesterday.
The thought that I've been obsessed with now ever since the Sweat signing happened, and to go back to the draft again, is Will Johnson, who is undoubtedly the top corner in this class, if you do not include Travis Hunter, the corner out of Michigan, is a consensus top 10 to top 12 guy rated overall. There's only been a few mocks, but we've seen
Will Johnson, cornerback, Michigan.
After intercepting Michael Penix Jr. on the first play of the second half of the 2024 National Championship game, things have only gone up for Johnson. This 2-year starter for the Wolverines recorded 14 tackles and 2 interceptions in the 2024 season. He brings to the table the ideal mixture of speed, length, and football IQ. Johnson did miss 6 games last season due to multiple injuries, but none that should prevent him from going high in this year's draft. NFL comp, New England Patriots cornerback Christian Gonzalez.
Wow, if he's Christian Gonzalez, I'll take him on the Cardinals.
I will take getting interrupted for passion pit. That's totally fine. To finish my point, if you have him fall to 16, there's a situation where you didn't address edge at all in free agency, and you're like, well, man, we'd love to take the kid, but we got to get an edge. Yeah. Now you can take a corner. Think about where corner was 2 years ago. Think about Will Johnson, Garrett Williams, Max Melton. This is what we've been talking about, Luke. We've been talking about building your defense out and building like the trenches, but building everything out through the draft. Corner's now set for the next 5 years, just like that.
Yeah. It's not that this team doesn't have needs anymore, but they used to have like glaring voids on the roster. And now it's like you're right. You have some flexibility. You don't have anything. You don't have anything on the roster now where it's like, man, we couldn't play a game tomorrow if we had one. Like if the season just had to start tomorrow, they could play it. They would have a good team. They would have a team that should compete for a playoff spot. And again, the move yesterday shows that they feel like they should be competing for a playoff spot, and there's no more excuses or kicking this down the road another year or whatever.
Thanks for watching Wolf and Luke. Tap to see more and click the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.